They say beauty is a blessing, but in the village of Green Hill, beauty was Harmony's curse. She knelt by the river each morning, her dark skin glowing like polished mahogany in the dawnlight. Her laughter was soft music that made even the birds pause. But the women who gathered to fetch water did not smile at her. They whispered behind cupped hands, their eyes sharp with envy. "That girl thinks she's special," one woman hissed, scrubbing her clothes harder than necessary. "Walking around like the sun rises just for her." Another clicked her tongue. "Beauty like that brings trouble. Mark my words." Harmony pretended not to hear. She focused on washing the red clay from her hands, the clay she used to mold pots that people traveled from distant villages to buy. Her pots were not just beautiful. They were perfect. Each curve, each line spoke of patience and skill beyond her 20 years. Suddenly, a trumpet blast split the morning air. The women froze. Birds scattered from the trees. Harmony looked up, water dripping from her fingers, as the sound echoed across the valley like a warning from the heavens themselves. The marketplace exploded with chaos. Traders abandoned their stalls. Children ran screaming with excitement. Women adjusted their head wraps and pinched their cheeks for color. The prince was coming. Prince Keto rode through the village gates on a white stallion, his chest decorated with gold chains that caught the sunlight like trap stars. His royal guards marched behind him, their spears gleaming. He was handsome in the way powerful men often are, confident and aware of his own importance. The crowd parted like the sea. Keto's eyes swept across the marketplace with bored interest until they landed on Harmony's stall. She stood there, clay dust on her simple blue wrapper, arranging her pots with careful hands. She did not look up. She did not need to see him to know he was staring. "That one," Keto announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent market. He pointed directly at Harmony. "I want that girl." The crowd gasped. Some women covered their mouths. Others exchanged knowing glances. This was it. The moment they had predicted. Harmony's beauty had finally attracted the wrong attention. Slowly, Harmony raised her eyes to meet the prince's gaze. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but clear as morning bells. "I am not for sale." The marketplace seemed to hold its breath. No one had ever refused Prince Keto. Not in matters of marriage, not in matters of anything. He was the king's only son, heir to the throne, the future ruler of the entire realm. Girls dreamed of catching his eye. Mothers prayed their daughters would be chosen. And Harmony had just said no. Keto's smile froze on his face. For a moment, he looked like a man who had been slapped but hadn't yet felt the sting. Then his expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. "Perhaps you did not understand," he said slowly. "I am Prince Keto. When I choose, people feel honored." "I understand perfectly, Your Highness," Harmony replied, her hands clasped before her. "But my heart is my own. I cannot give what I do not wish to give." The prince's jaw tightened. He wheeled his horse around without another word and rode away, his guards scrambling to follow. Dust rose in his wake like angry spirits. The moment he disappeared, the mockery began. "Who does she think she is, a trader spat? Too good for the prince? She must be cursed," another whispered. "No sane woman refuses royalty." By evening, Harmony's stall stood alone. Empty. Avoided like a plague house. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence and isolation. The women who once bought her pots now crossed to the other side of the market when they saw her. Children who used to beg for clay scraps to play with ran away when she approached. Even the birds seemed to avoid the tree above her stall. Harmony worked anyway. Her hands shaped clay into bowls and cups, each one perfect, each one unwanted. She told herself she had made the right choice. A marriage without love was a prison without walls. She would not trade her freedom for a crown. On the 4th morning, an old traveler appeared at her stall. He was bent with age, his walking stick worn smooth from years of use. His clothes were dusty from the road, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds, deep and knowing. "Water," he croaked. "Please, daughter. The sun has drained me dry." Amani immediately fetched her gourd and poured him fresh water. When he finished drinking, she handed him one of her small clay cups. "Keep it," she said gently. "You'll need it on your journey." The old man studied her face for a long moment. Then he smiled, revealing gaps where teeth once lived. "One day, you will drink from a greater vessel than any you have made." Before she could ask what he meant, the sound of marching boots filled the air. Royal guards surrounded her store, their faces grim. "Amani the potter," their captain announced. "You are summoned to the palace. Come immediately." The palace rose before her like a mountain of white stone and gold. Amani had never been inside before. Few common people had. She walked through corridors lined with silk tapestries and floors so polished she could see her reflection. Servants whispered as she passed, their eyes following her with curiosity and pity. They brought her to a chamber filled with treasures. Gold necklaces hung on stands like captured sunlight. Silk robes in every color imaginable draped across cushioned chairs. Perfumes in crystal bottles filled the air with scents of jasmine and roses. A table groaned under the weight of fruits she had never seen before. Prince Keto stood in the center of it all, arms spread wide like a merchant displaying his finest goods. "All of this could be yours," he said. "Gold, silk, servants, power. You would never work another day. Your hands would never touch clay again. Just kneel before me and say yes." Amani looked around the room. She touched the silk robe, felt its smoothness against her rough palms. She smelled the perfumes, breathed in their sweetness. For a moment, just a moment, she imagined a life without struggle. Then she looked at Keto's face. His smile did not reach his eyes. This was not an offer. It was a purchase. "My heart bows only to truth," she said quietly. "And the truth is, I do not love you. I cannot marry without love." When Amani returned to the marketplace the next morning, her world had shattered. Her stall was destroyed. Every pot she had carefully made lay in pieces on the ground. Red clay shards mixed with the dust like broken dreams. Someone had even torn down the wooden frame of her stall, leaving only splinters. The same women who had envied her beauty now laughed openly. They did not hide behind their hands anymore. Their mockery was loud and cruel. "Look at the proud girl now," one woman cackled. "Refused the prince and lost everything. She deserves it," another added. Teaching her a lesson about knowing her place. A fruit seller kicked a broken pot as he walked past. "Cursed hands make cursed things anyway." Amani knelt in the ruins of her work. Each broken piece represented hours of careful shaping, of patient firing, of hope. Her eyes burned with tears, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of them." "Need help?" a familiar voice asked. She looked up. The old traveler stood there, leaning on his walking stick, humming a strange tune. The laughter around them seemed to quiet. The mockery faded. Even the harsh morning sun seemed to soften. He knelt beside her, his old bones creaking, and began gathering the broken clay pieces into a pile. For 3 days, the old traveler stayed. He helped Amani rebuild her store, teaching her things her own father had never known. He showed her how to mix clay with ashes from certain trees, creating pottery that was stronger than before. He taught her to fire her pots at different temperatures, producing colors she had never achieved. "What breaks can be made stronger," he said, his weathered hands guiding hers. "Clay learns from its scars. So do people." Amani walked beside him in silence, grateful for his presence. He asked for nothing. No payment. No thanks. He simply helped, humming that strange tune that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the village, beyond the realm, beyond the world itself. On the evening of the third day, as the sun painted the sky orange and purple, Harmony turned to thank him. But words caught in her throat. There was something about him now, something she had not noticed before. The way the fading light seemed to pass through him rather than reflect off him. The way his eyes held depths that no human eyes should hold. "Who are you?" she whispered. He smiled that gap-toothed smile. "I am someone who sees what others miss. Sleep well tonight, daughter. Your dreams will show you the way." That night, Harmony dreamed. In her dream, a golden pot floated on dark water, spinning slowly. It called her name in a voice like wind through caves. When she reached for it, it sank beneath the surface, leaving only ripples that looked like words she could not read. The morning brought news that turned Harmony's blood cold. Royal messengers nailed notices to every tree in the marketplace. Drums beat a warning rhythm. The entire village gathered to hear the decree. By order of King Jabari, the chief messenger announced, his voice echoing off the buildings. Any person who refuses a royal marriage proposal shall be considered an enemy of the crown. Such a person will be banished from the realm within 7 days. This is the law. The crowd erupted. Some shouted in approval. Others whispered nervously. All eyes turned toward Harmony's store. "Banish her," someone yelled. "She brought this on herself," another voice added. "Punishment for pride," a woman shrieked. The chanting started. "Banish the potter. Banish the potter." It grew louder, more aggressive, feeding on itself like fire feeds on dry grass. Harmony stood frozen behind her newly rebuilt store, watching familiar faces transform into masks of hatred and judgment. Then, as suddenly as it started, the chanting stopped. People looked around, confused. The air felt different. Heavier. Charged with something they could not name. Harmony looked at her small table. There, where nothing had been moments before, lay a single clay coin. It was perfectly round, perfectly smooth, carved with symbols she had never seen. And it glowed faintly, like an ember that refused to die. The old traveler was gone. That night, Harmony could not sleep. She sat by her window, the clay coin in her palm, watching moonlight paint silver patterns across her small room. The coin was warm, alive somehow, pulsing with gentle heat like a heartbeat. Under the moon's glow, the symbols carved into it seemed to shift and move. She brought it closer to her eyes. The markings were not in any language she knew. They looked ancient, older than the village, older than the kingdom itself. But there, at the center, was one symbol she recognized. A crown. Not just any crown. The specific design of the ancient kings, the ones from stories her grandmother used to tell. The first rulers, before greed and pride corrupted the throne. "What are you?" she whispered to the coin. It offered no answer. But as she stared, the symbols seemed to form words in her mind. Words without sound. Wait. Watch. Trust. Harmony placed the coin beneath her sleeping mat and finally closed her eyes. When she woke, the sun was already high. She had overslept for the first time in years. She rushed to the marketplace, hoping to save whatever remained of her business. But when she arrived, her stall was empty. Everything was gone. Every pot she had remade. Every tool. Every scrap of clay. Stolen in the night. Everything except the coin, still warm in her pocket. Witchcraft. The accusation rang across the marketplace like thunder. Elder Okom pointed at Harmony with a trembling finger, his white beard shaking with rage. First she refuses the prince. Then she survives the destruction of her store. Now she possesses mysterious objects that glow in the dark. This girl has made deals with dark spirits. A crowd gathered immediately. In the village, accusations of witchcraft were serious. They meant trials. They meant judgment. They sometimes meant death. I saw the lights myself, a woman testified, though Amoni had never shown the coin to anyone. Coming from her window last night. Unnatural. Evil. My son fell sick the day she returned from the palace, another lied. Coincidence? I think not. Amoni wanted to defend herself, but who would believe her? The truth sounded more impossible than the lies. An old traveler who disappeared into air. A glowing coin that appeared from nowhere. Dreams that felt more real than waking. The elders summoned her to the village square. For old men sat on stools beneath the ancient baobab tree, the same tree where judgments had been passed for generations. Their faces were carved with age and certainty. Elder Okon held out his hand. Show us this object. Amoni had no choice. She pulled the coin from her pocket and placed it in his palm. The moment he touched it, his expression changed. His eyes widened. His mouth opened. He looked at the other elders. This mark. He stammered. This belongs to the first king of the realm. King Zubri the Just. The elders' chamber erupted in whispers. King Zubri was legend, not history. He had ruled hundreds of years ago, back when the kingdom was young and rulers were chosen for wisdom rather than birth. His reign was called the Golden Age, a time when justice flowed like rivers and the people lived in peace. But Zubri had disappeared mysteriously. One day he was on the throne, the next day he was gone. Some said he died. Others claimed he walked into the forest and became one with the spirits. His seal, the one on Amoni's coin, had not been seen since. Where did you get this? Elder Okon demanded, his earlier anger replaced by something else. Fear, perhaps. Or reverence. An old traveler gave it to me, Amoni said truthfully. He helped me rebuild my stall after it was destroyed. Describe this traveler. Amoni did. As she spoke, the elders exchanged glances. Elder Chioma, the oldest among them, leaned forward, her eyes sharp despite her many years. The humming, she said. Did he hum a tune that felt older than time itself? Yes, Amoni whispered. How did you know? Chioma's hands shook as she reached for the coin. My grandmother told me stories. She said Zubri still walks among us, testing hearts, rewarding truth. We thought they were just tales to teach children morals. That night, Amoni could not stay in the village. She felt eyes watching her from every window, every shadow. Amoni walked through the dark fields, guided only by moonlight and instinct. Her feet seemed to know where to go, following a path she had never walked but somehow recognized. The coin in her pocket grew warmer with each step, pulling her forward like a compass pointing home. After an hour of walking, she found it. The house of dust. It was not really a house, more like a forgotten potter's workshop. The walls were crumbling. The roof had holes that let in moonlight. Vines crawled through the windows like nature trying to reclaim what humans had abandoned. The door hung on one hinge, creaking in the night breeze. Amoni pushed it open and stepped inside. Her breath caught. The room was filled with pottery. Hundreds of vessels lined the walls, covered the floor, stacked on shelves. But these were not ordinary pots. Each one was shaped like a human face. Men, women, children. Some she recognized from the village. Others were strangers. All were made with such incredible skill that they seemed ready to speak. She walked among them slowly, studying each face. There was Elder Okon, his expression stern. There was the fruit seller who had kicked her broken pots. There was her mother, gone 5 years now, smiling the way she used to smile before sickness took her. And there, in the corner, on a small pedestal, was a pot shaped like her own face. Her eyes. Her nose. Her lips. Perfect in every detail. Amoni reached out with trembling fingers. The moment her fingers touched the clay face, it cracked. Not a small crack. A split that ran from the crown of the head to the base, dividing the pot cleanly in two. Harmony gasped and pulled back, but it was too late. Golden light poured from the crack like liquid sunshine. It filled the room, bright and warm but not blinding. The light swirled around her, lifting her hair, making her skin tingle. It felt alive. Intelligent. Ancient. Words formed in the light, not spoken but understood. The vessel breaks so the truth can pour out. The other clay faces began to glow. One by one, each pot illuminated from within, showing what they truly held. The face of the fruit seller revealed greed. The face of the woman who had accused her showed envy. Elder Okon's face contained fear of losing power. But some faces glowed with different colors. A child's face shone with pure innocence. An old woman's face radiated kindness. A farmer's face held honest labor. Harmony understood suddenly. These were not just pots. They were vessels of truth, showing the contents of human hearts. The golden light from her own broken vessel coalesced into a shape. For a moment, she thought she saw the old traveler's face. Then it dispersed like mist. Outside the house of dust, footsteps pounded. A royal soldier had followed her, drawn by the light. He pressed his face to the cracked wall and saw everything. The glowing pots. The golden light. Harmony standing in the center of it all. He ran back toward the palace, screaming at the top of his lungs, "The witch has risen." She summoned spirits. The witch has risen. They came for her at dawn. 20 guards with spears and chains. They dragged Harmony from the house of dust, not caring when thorns tore her dress or stones cut her feet. The soldier had spread his story through the palace, and by morning it had grown into legend. Harmony was a witch. A demon. A threat to the kingdom. The guards pulled her through the marketplace where she had once sold her pots. People lined the streets, the same people who had bought from her, praised her work, called her talented. Now they threw stones. A rock struck her shoulder. Another hit her back. A rotten fruit splattered across her face. She stumbled, and the guards yanked her chains harder, forcing her to keep walking. Witch, they screamed. Demon. Cursed one. Her mother's old shawl, the last piece of her family she still owned, slipped from her shoulders. It fell into the mud, trampled immediately by a dozen feet. Harmony watched it disappear, and for the first time since this nightmare began, tears fell from her eyes. They were going to kill her. She knew it. She had seen executions before. The crowd's bloodlust, the ceremonial reading of crimes, the final prayer before the blade fell. This was how her story would end. Not in a home with children. Not surrounded by the pots she loved to make. But here, in the mud, hated by everyone she had ever known. Then everything stopped. A royal messenger appeared, riding hard, his horse foaming with effort. He held an envelope high above his head. "Halt," he commanded. By order of King Jabari himself. The guards released their grip on Harmony's chains. The crowd's shouting faded to confused murmurs. The messenger dismounted and walked straight to Harmony, ignoring the mud, the stones, the watching eyes. He held out the envelope. It was sealed with gold wax. The king's personal seal. Harmony the potter, the messenger announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are hereby summoned to appear before King Jabari at the palace. Tomorrow. Dawn. Come alone." He pressed the envelope into her hands, mounted his horse, and rode away before anyone could ask questions. The crowd stood frozen. An invitation from the king himself. Not a summons to execution, but an audience. This had never happened before. Common people did not receive personal invitations sealed in gold. The guards looked at each other, uncertain. Could they still arrest her? The king's invitation changed everything. Slowly, reluctantly, they unlocked her chains. They did not apologize. They simply walked away, leaving Amani standing in the middle of the street, covered in mud and blood and rotten fruit, holding a golden envelope. She looked down at it, then up at the sky. The clouds parted briefly, and sunlight broke through, illuminating her face. "Traveler," she whispered, though she did not know if he could hear her. "Is this your doing?" The light seemed to warm her skin, answering without words. That night, Amani did not sleep. She cleaned herself as best she could, mended her torn dress with shaking hands, and watched the hours pass with growing dread and strange hope. Amani arrived at the palace as the first light of dawn touched the golden towers. The gates stood open, but no guards waited to escort her. No servants rushed to greet her. The vast courtyard was empty, silent except for the sound of fountain water and her own footsteps on marble. She walked through corridors she remembered from her first visit, past the room of treasures, past the prince's chambers, deeper into the palace than she had ever gone. The doors to the throne room stood open before her. Inside, the grand hall stretched like a cathedral. Pillars rose to a ceiling painted with stars. Windows of colored glass cast rainbow patterns across the floor. And there, at the far end, sat the throne of the realm. It was empty. Almost empty. On the golden seat, small and insignificant against such grandeur, lay the clay coin the old traveler had given her. The same coin the elders had examined. The same coin she thought was still in her pocket. Amani's hand flew to her dress. The pocket was empty. When had she lost it? How had it gotten here? She walked forward slowly, her footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. The coin seemed to call to her, pulling her closer. She reached the throne and picked it up. It was warm as always, pulsing with a gentle heartbeat. Behind her, the massive doors slammed shut. The sound boomed like thunder, final as a coffin lid closing. Amani spun around, heart racing. She was trapped. Alone. In the throne room of the king. With only a clay coin and growing fear. "Do not be afraid." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Soft. Ancient. Familiar. Amani turned in circles, searching for the speaker. The throne room seemed to shift around her. The walls moved closer, or perhaps she moved closer to them. A hidden corridor appeared where none had been before, lined with mirrors on both sides. But these were not ordinary mirrors. They did not show her reflection. The first mirror showed the face of the water seller she had helped during the dry season, giving him clay cups for free so his customers could drink. His lips moved, whispering words she could hear in her heart, "Kindness never dies." The second mirror showed a child she had taught to shape clay when his father could not afford apprenticeship fees. His voice joined the first, "Kindness never dies." One by one, the mirrors revealed faces. People she had helped. People she had shown mercy. People she had served without expecting payment or praise. All of them whispered the same words, building like a song. Kindness never dies. Kindness never dies. Kindness never dies. The last mirror at the end of the corridor showed the old traveler. He stood there in the reflection, looking exactly as he had when he first appeared at her store. But now his image began to change. He stood straighter. His back unbent. His walking stick transformed into a royal staff. His dusty clothes shimmered into robes of state. His reflection stepped forward, passing through the glass like water. Amani's knees nearly gave out. She knew that face. Everyone in the realm knew that face. It was painted in the palace. Carved in statues. Taught in every child's history lessons. King Zuberi. The just. The lost. The legend. The old traveler removed his hood, and the illusion fell away completely. The bent posture straightened into the bearing of a king. The wrinkled skin smoothed into the face of a man in his prime. The storm cloud eyes blazed with power and wisdom accumulated over centuries. How? Amani whispered. You died. Hundreds of years ago. Did I? Zubri smiled, the same gap-toothed smile she remembered, though now she understood it was a disguise. Or did I simply choose to walk among my people to see what they had become? But why? Why pretend? Why come to me? Zubri gestured around the throne room. Because a throne can be a prison. Sitting here, surrounded by advisors and nobles who only tell you what you want to hear, a king becomes blind. So I left. I have walked this kingdom for generations, appearing when needed, testing hearts, watching how power corrupts and how truth survives. He moved closer to Amani, studying her face with those ancient eyes. My son, King Jabari, rules now. He is a good man but weak. He lets others make decisions. And his son, Prince Keto. Zubri's expression darkened. Keto believes the throne makes him important. He takes what he wants because no one has ever told him no. Until me, Amani said quietly. Until you. Zubri nodded. I watched you refuse him, not out of pride, but out of principle. I watched you lose everything and rebuild. I watched you give freely when you had little. I watched you hold on to truth when lies would have been easier. He held out his hand. In his palm appeared a clay coin identical to the one she held. Only one heart in this land remained unbought. Yours. The throne room doors opened again. This time, people entered. King Jabari walked in first, his royal robes trailing behind him. He was younger than Amani expected, perhaps 40, with kind eyes that looked tired from the weight of the crown. Behind him came Prince Keto, flanked by guards. The prince's confident stride faltered when he saw his great-grandfather standing there, alive, undeniable, radiating power that made Keto's gold chains look like children's toys. Grandfather Zubri. Jabari's voice shook. But how? The legends said. Legends are truths wrapped in time, Zubri replied. I needed to see if my bloodline still carried honor. If the throne still served the people or only served itself. He turned his gaze to Keto. Kneel, boy. I am a prince, Keto protested, but his voice lacked its usual arrogance. I don't kneel to. Kneel. The command was not loud, but it shook the floor beneath their feet. Windows rattled. The very air seemed to press down on Keto's shoulders. Slowly, unwillingly, the prince's knees bent. He knelt on the marble floor before his great-grandfather and the potter girl he had tried to claim. Zubri looked down at him with disappointment that cut deeper than anger. You see a woman and think possession. You see beauty and think conquest. You believe the crown gives you the right to take whatever you desire. He gestured to Amani. This woman is worth more than 100 princes like you. She has humility. Integrity. Courage. The very qualities you lack. Keto's face burned with shame, but defiance still flickered in his eyes. She's just a potter. Then you will learn from a potter, Zubri declared. For the next month, Prince Keto, you will serve as Amani's apprentice. You will learn to work clay with your hands. You will learn patience. You will learn that true value comes not from birth, but from character. Father. Keto turned desperately to King Jabari. You can't allow this. I am the heir. I cannot work like a common laborer. But Jabari's expression had hardened. Perhaps seeing his grandfather alive had awakened something in him. Perhaps shame at what his son had become finally broke through his weakness. You will obey, he said firmly. Or you will forfeit your claim to the throne. The court gasped. Such a threat had never been spoken before. Zubri turned to Amani. Will you teach him? It is much to ask, I know, after how he treated you. Amani looked at Keto, still kneeling, pride warring with fear on his face. She thought about revenge. About refusing, making him feel the humiliation she had felt. But then she remembered the mirrors. All those faces whispering, kindness never dies. I will teach him, she said quietly. But he must come to my stall in the marketplace. No servants. No guards. Just him and the clay. The next morning, Prince Keto appeared at Amoni's rebuilt stall. He wore simple clothes, no jewelry, his hands soft and uncalloused. The marketplace buzzed with gossip. The same people who had mocked Amoni now watched in stunned silence. First lesson, Amoni said, handing him a lump of wet clay. Make a simple bow. Perfect center. Even walls. Smooth finish. Keto grabbed the clay roughly. Within seconds, it collapsed. He tried again. It fell apart. Again. Again. His frustration grew with each failure. For 2 weeks, Keto failed. Every pot he attempted crumbled, collapsed, or cracked in the firing. His royal hands blistered. His back ached from bending over the potter's wheel. Sweat stained his simple clothes. The marketplace vendors watched and whispered, some with satisfaction, others with growing respect. Amoni never mocked him. She simply showed him again and again how to center the clay, how to apply steady pressure, how to feel the clay's resistance and work with it, not against it. She was patient in a way no one had ever been patient with him before. On the 15th day, something changed. Keto arrived early, before the market opened. He sat at the wheel without being told. He took the clay with gentle hands. He breathed deeply, centered himself, and tried again. This time, the wall stayed up. The bow took shape. It was not perfect, but it was whole. When he lifted it from the wheel, his hands were shaking. Not from effort, but from something else. Pride, perhaps. Real pride, not the false pride of birth but the satisfaction of creating something with his own hands. It's terrible, he said, looking at the uneven rim and thick walls. Amoni smiled. Even broken clay remembers the hands that shaped it. And sometimes broken things become beautiful when they are remade. Keto looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Not as a possession to acquire. Not as a potter beneath his station. But as a person. A teacher. Someone with wisdom he desperately needed. I was wrong, he said simply. About everything. About you. About what makes someone valuable. I'm sorry. King Zubri, watching from a distance in his old traveler disguise, smiled. King Jabari called a gathering of the entire realm. Nobles and commoners alike filled the palace courtyard. Amoni stood beside King Zubri, still not quite believing any of this was real. Keto stood on her other side, his hands marked with clay stains he wore now with strange pride. People of the realm, Jabari's voice rang out across the crowd. For too long, we have valued the wrong things. Wealth over character. Birth over merit. Power over service. Today, we begin a new tradition. He held up a sealed decree. Zubri had dictated it. Jabari had written it. Together, they were changing the kingdom. I announced the formation of the Council of Hearts, Jabari continued. Advisors who will serve the throne and the people, chosen not for their family names or wealth, but for their demonstrated virtue. They will have power to counsel the king on all matters and veto decisions that serve power over people. The crowd murmured, uncertain. Change always brought uncertainty. And I named the first member of this council, Jabari turned to Amoni. Amoni, the potter who refused the prince's proposal because she valued truth. Who lost everything and rebuilt with integrity. Who taught my son humility when I failed to do so? Will you serve? Amoni looked at Zubri, who nodded encouragingly. She looked at Keto, who murmured the words, please. She looked at the crowd, seeing faces of people she had helped, people who had mocked her, people who had thrown stones. She thought about saying no. About returning to her simple life. About making pots in peace. But kindness never dies. And sometimes the greatest kindness is accepting responsibility when others need you. I will serve, she said. The crowd erupted. Not in mockery this time, but in something else. Wonder. Hope. The possibility of change. The Festival of New Hearts, they called it. The entire kingdom prepared for a celebration unlike any they had known. Not a festival of military victories or royal births, but of transformation. Of choosing character over comfort. Amani worked for days on a special creation. Her hands shaped clay with the skill of years and the wisdom of recent trials. She made a crown, not of gold or jewels, but of simple red clay. She carved it with symbols representing the virtues the kingdom would now honor: a water jug for service, a seed for growth, a hand for labor, a heart for truth. On the festival day, thousands gathered in the palace square. Musicians played. Dancers moved. Food was shared freely between rich and poor, noble and common. The old divisions seemed to blur, at least for this one day. King Zubri stood on the platform, looking not like the disguised traveler or the ancient king, but something in between. Both human and legend. He held Amani's clay crown in his weathered hands. This crown, he announced, represents what we should value. Not the gold of greed or the jewels of vanity, but the simple clay of honest work and humble service. The crowd fell silent, watching. Zubri turned to Prince Keto. Kneel, grandson. This time, Keto did not hesitate. He knelt willingly, head bowed, his clay-stained hands folded before him. Amani stepped forward. She lifted the clay crown and placed it gently on Keto's head. Not as mockery, but as teaching. Not as punishment, but as blessing. Wear this, she said softly, and remember. A true crown weighs heavy because it carries the hopes of all people, not just the powerful. After the ceremony, Amani walked to the palace gardens. She had asked for this time alone, needing to process everything that had changed in just a few weeks. From potter to exile to council member. From mocked to honored. From alone to surrounded by people seeking her wisdom. The garden had a river running through it, recently restored after years of neglect. Its water sparkled in the afternoon sun, clear and pure. Amani knelt by the bank, remembering another river, another morning, when women had whispered that her beauty would bring trouble. They had been right, in a way. But trouble had brought transformation. She pulled the clay coin from her pocket. It still pulsed with gentle warmth, though she understood now it was not magic in the coin itself. It was a reminder. A symbol. A promise that goodness, though tested, ultimately endures. Thank you, she whispered to the coin, to Zubri, to the spirits, to whatever force had guided her through the darkness. Then she tossed the coin into the river. It spun in the air, catching sunlight, before splashing into the clear water. She watched it sink, expecting it to disappear into the depths. But the ripples it created spread across the surface, wider and wider. And in those ripples, she saw her own reflection. Not as she had been, covered in mud and shame. But as she was now. Oh. Healed. At peace. The reflection smiled back at her, radiant with the kind of beauty that comes not from a perfect face but from a tested spirit that refused to break. Somewhere in the distance, she heard humming. That strange, ancient tune. She did not turn to look. She simply smiled. Months passed. The Council of Hearts grew, adding farmers, healers, teachers, and craftspeople who had demonstrated integrity in their daily lives. Laws changed. The gap between rich and poor began to narrow. Prince Keto took his lessons seriously, spending half his days in council meetings and half working with his hands, never forgetting what clay had taught him. Amani returned to the marketplace often. Not to sell pots anymore, though she still made them in her spare time. She came to listen. To learn what the people truly needed. To ensure the council never lost touch with those they served. Her old stall had been rebuilt into something larger. Now it served as a place where anyone could come to speak freely, to share concerns, to ask for help. People lined up not to buy pottery but to seek wisdom. One morning, a young woman approached. She was beautiful, and her eyes held fear. "They want me to marry a man I don't love," she said quietly. "A wealthy merchant. My family says I'm being foolish. That I should be grateful." Amani listened, remembering. Then she smiled gently and said, "Let me tell you a story about a girl who said no to a prince. Those who see with pride see only gold. Those who see with love find kingdoms in clay." Amani's beauty had indeed brought trouble, but trouble had revealed truth. And truth had set not just her, but an entire kingdom, free. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.